Kia ora tamariki mā, and welcome back to The Word. I wonder if you've ever had to stand up for something you believe in. Well, in today's story, we're going to hear about a brave woman who stood up for what was right even though she was scared and even though it was very dangerous. Esther hadn't led an easy life. Her parents had died when she was young, and now her cousin Mordecai looked after her, and they lived in Susa, which was part of the Persian Empire. The Jewish people who lived there were in exile, which means they'd been forced to leave their own home and live in a different country. It wasn't always easy trying to fit in when everything was so different, and not everyone was kind to Jewish people. One day, cousin Mordecai came home with some news. He worked at the palace gates, and he had heard that Queen Vashti had been banished by her husband, King Xerxes, because she had said no to the king. Even though she had a good reason for saying no, you were not allowed to say no to the king. King Xerxes felt embarrassed that she had not listened to him, and he did not like his power being challenged, so he kicked her out of the palace and started looking for a new queen. The guards came searching for all the beautiful young women of Persia, and Esther, along with hundreds of others, were taken to the palace to prepare. King Xerxes would get to meet them all for just one night, and then he would choose his new queen. Esther was nervous. This was not the life she'd always dreamt of. Her cousin told her to be careful not to tell anyone that she was part of God's special whānau. He wanted to protect her, and it was going to be a lot harder outside of the palace. Mordecai was going to need to trust that God could watch over Esther. He had a sense that maybe God had a plan for her which was much bigger than what he had ever dreamed of. Well, the day finally arrived and Esther was taken to the king. He loved her straight away and decided to make her his new queen. Esther still kept quiet about who she was. She trusted that her cousin knew what was best for her. I wondered what it was like living in the palace. Esther had a beautiful home, beautiful clothes and the best food, but there was one big problem. King Xerxes' right-hand man, his name was Haman, and she didn't trust him at all. He didn't like the Jewish people, God's whānau, and he treated them badly. What would he do if he found out that Esther was one of them? One day, Haman came to King Xerxes with a plan, and it was an evil plan. He told the king that God's whānau were not respecting him or his laws. Haman huddled up and shared his plan with the king. There was only one thing to do to fix this. They don't respect you or your laws, so we'll kill them all. King Xerxes trusted Haman, so he signed off on the plan. On March the 7th, all of the Jews in Persia would be killed. When Mordecai heard this, he was so sad. What could they do? A king's signed law could not be broken. It seemed like there was no way out. Or was there? Esther. Maybe Esther could help. The king loved her and he wouldn't want his wife to be killed. Mordecai sent a message to Esther telling her about Haman's plan, and Esther called all of the Jewish people to pray and fast, go without food for 3 days so that they could focus more on their prayers. After 3 days, she would go to the king. Now, back in those times, you didn't just rock up to visit the king, even if he was your husband. If the king didn't call for you and you went to him anyway, you could be killed for just approaching him. This was really risky, but she trusted that God had a plan. After 3 days, Esther went to the king. Everyone in the throne room looked on in shock. What was she doing? Didn't she know this could get her killed? Esther kept her head down and waited. King Xerxes was confused. Why had she come? This must be something important, so he reached out his scepter towards her, and this meant she was safe. He would listen to her. Esther asked if she can put on a special dinner for him and his right-hand man Haman. "Sure thing," said the king. They came for dinner and they really enjoyed it, and the king asked again what she wanted. Esther asked if they would come back the next night for dinner, and so they did. This time when Xerxes asked Esther what she wanted, she said, "Please, can you save my life and the lives of my people?" The truth was finally out. Now Xerxes knew everything. He didn't want to lose the woman he loved, but how could he fix this? Even the king couldn't undo a law once it had been signed. Just like that, a thought popped into his head. "I'll make another law, one that says the Jewish people can fight to protect their lives." God had answered their prayers. Esther had saved her people. She shows us how just one brave, courageous person can make a difference when they stand up for what is right. As lifelong followers of Jesus, there are times when we may need to stand up for what's right, and it may seem scary, just like it did for Esther. But do you know what? When you do this, you can totally know that God is right beside you, giving you the strength you need to do what's right.